In the heart of a bustling city where glass towers pierced the clouds and the streets never slept, lived a boy named Elijah. At just 10 years old, he was already known on the corners of 45th Street as the kid with the papers. Every morning before the sun touched the skyline, Elijah would rise from the thin mattress he shared with his younger sister and walk 5 blocks to the printing depot. By 5 a.m., the ink-stained bundles would be in his arms, and by 6:00, he'd already sold half of them. He didn't sell newspapers just for extra cash. Elijah was the man of the house. His father had vanished when he was 4. His mother, a seamstress, worked until her fingers bled, yet still came home with barely enough for a meal. And so, Elijah sold headlines, whispered the day's news into the ears of morning commuters, and ran through traffic lights just to catch a customer before the light turned green. Most people barely noticed him. A blur in a red hoodie. A voice in the wind shouting, "Daily Times. Get your paper." But there was something different about Elijah, something burning in his eyes that the world hadn't yet learned to see. He wasn't just reading the papers to sell them. He was studying them. Stock markets, real estate columns, business features, he read them all. While his classmates struggled with multiplication tables, Elijah was memorizing the names of CEOs, following company mergers, and learning what made businesses succeed or fail. One rainy morning, while most kids were still tucked in bed, Elijah stood outside a coffee shop, soaked but smiling. A sharply dressed man with silver hair and a navy blue suit stepped out and hesitated before pulling out his wallet. "You're out here every morning, aren't you?" the man asked. "Yes, sir." "Rain or shine? Ever thought about doing something else?" Elijah tilted his head. "Yes, sir. I want to run a business one day. A big one." The man smiled, surprised. "That so? And what kind of business?" "I don't know yet. But I read every paper I sell. I'm learning." The man laughed. "Well, keep reading, kid. You might just make it." He handed Elijah a $10 bill and walked away. What Elijah didn't know was that the man's name was Malcolm Barnes, a real estate mogul and one of the city's richest entrepreneurs. That brief encounter would come back years later, in the most unexpected way. By the time Elijah turned 16, he had saved enough money to buy a used laptop. At night, when his mother and sister were asleep, he studied. He watched YouTube videos on finance, took free online courses, and built a tiny blog where he wrote summaries of business articles. No one read it at first, but Elijah didn't care. He was practicing. Learning. Getting sharper. At 17, he turned that blog into a website and began writing simplified financial news for teens. He called it Money Talks for Youth. He shared it on forums, tagged it in Reddit threads, and even printed flyers to give to students at the local high school. To his surprise, the site exploded. Thousands of teens started following. Teachers began using his articles in class. Parents emailed him asking for tips for their kids. Elijah saw the demand and responded by creating simple video explainers. Then he released a budgeting app, nothing fancy, just a tool to help students track allowance, side jobs, and saving goals. By 19, Elijah had over 100,000 followers, a team of 4 freelance writers, and an offer from a venture capital firm to invest $200,000 in his platform. He didn't celebrate. He reinvested. He upgraded the app. Made it more user-friendly. Added gamified savings goals. Partnered with schools. Within 2 years, over 1,000 schools in the country were using his tools in financial literacy programs. Then came the turning point. A global tech company announced it would sponsor young entrepreneurs under 25. Elijah applied. And when he walked into the panel room, nervous but dressed in a sharp black suit, he saw a familiar face among the judges. Malcolm Barnes. The man who once bought a newspaper from a soaked 10-year-old now stared at the young businessman before him. Malcolm didn't say a word. But when Elijah finished his presentation, showcasing how his platform had helped over 500,000 students gain financial literacy, the entire panel stood up and clapped. Elijah was awarded a $1 million seed fund and a full mentorship program. Malcolm walked up, shook his hand, and whispered, "I told you you might just make it." By 25, Elijah's company, now rebranded as We Grow Finance, had users in 38 countries. He was featured in Forbes Under 30. He spoke at global conferences. Yet, he never left his roots. He returned to the printing depot and bought it out, turning it into a tech education hub for low-income youth. He paid for his sister's college. Built his mom a home she never dreamed she could live in. But he didn't stop there. Elijah began a scholarship fund for kids who sold newspapers, collected bottles, or worked street corners, because he remembered what it felt like to be invisible. One morning, while speaking at a youth leadership summit, a girl in the audience asked him, "What's the first thing you'd tell your 10-year-old self, if you could go back?" Elijah smiled, eyes misty, and said, "I'd tell him, you're not just selling papers. You're writing your future. Keep going. No one sees it yet, but they will." Final words. Elijah's journey from a boy with ink-stained hands to a billionaire entrepreneur wasn't just about money. It was about vision. Grit. The audacity to believe in more, even when the world offered less. He didn't wait for the world to hand him a chance, he created one. Because sometimes, the richest stories come from the poorest beginnings.